Hello, everyone. Welcome or welcome back to Dirty Martini. I hope you're doing well and I hope you're having an amazing day. Please excuse if I sound like a mess. I just finished rewatching one day and I think that sums it up, like that says enough. I genuinely thought that knowing the plot and having already seen it, I was going to be okay and I wasn't going to let it hit me as hard as it did the first time I watched it. And boy, was I wrong. So, like a few weeks ago, I told you about my love for One Day. Yeah, it is full on, like pedal to the metal. Like, I cried my eyes out. It was such an ugly picture. And thank God I was alone because there was snot everywhere. I couldn't breathe properly for a bit there. And my face was burning red and just like burning from the tears. And now my skin just feels dehydrated. I don't know why that is, but every single time after I have like a solid crying session, my skin feels as if as if it's never been touched by a moisturizer before. It could be from the saltiness of the tears, maybe that's why, but so I will lather up an aloe vera after this, and because like it's so dry, it's even painful to move at this point. So, yeah, it wasn't pretty. And so, to distract myself, I am here with you trying to ignore the mess that I was literally less than half an hour ago. You know what is something I have been going through for quite a while now, I would say? I am significantly and heartbreakingly uninspired. I have been feeling creatively stuck, but like exploratorily stuck. Not like when it comes to me creating art, which actually has been happening for quite a few years now, although recently I've been trying to experiment with different art forms to get myself into the creation of things again because it just brings me joy, but whatever. So, what I'm talking about in particular is that I am in this creative rut when it comes to finding new music and new shows to watch. And I know champagne problems, but like, as someone who consumes content 24/7, this is something significantly important for me. And I am begging you, someone lock Harry Styles in the hallway again and let him create music that because like I can re-listen to HS1 only so many times in a day without like being, I wouldn't say annoyed, but I swear I keep re-listening to my playlist, but they don't hit that good anymore because I know them in and out. Like every single time I listen to a song, I know which one it precedes and which one it follows. So it's not even fun. There's no inspiration. There's no magic and creativity. And shuffle doesn't help. It's still the same songs. And I have been trying to get myself to listen to some new music that I have been overlooking, or just music I have forgotten about, or just in general like new music, new genres, music in different languages that I usually don't listen to. And I don't know what it is, but I need to be in a really specific mood to be discovering new music. I need to be in an exploratory mood. I need to be open minded and just open to the world to listen to something new because I don't know what it is, but it's just so comforting and enjoyable to listen to songs you already know and can sing along to. And sure, they all started off as new songs, songs that you hadn't listened to before you listened to them. But recently, I've just been stuck and I don't want to get myself to listen to new music, but I also want to diversify my playlists and I just cannot explain it. I am just bored. And I love listening to music and consuming content in every single moment of my life because that means I don't have to actually think my thoughts and feel my feelings. So, what I end up doing is I go back to rewatching the same shows as I just did with One Day. And the reason I do this is because they're comforting, but also because I haven't come across a new show that I enjoy, and I haven't come across one in a long time. But I also cannot get myself to commit to watching a new series because I don't know what it is with me, but every single time I start a series, I have to finish it, whether I like it or not. And that is not great, but so you can see how just this becomes a vicious cycle. And I started watching actually Two and a Half Men recently, which was interestingly enough the very first sitcom that was not produced by Disney or Nickelodeon that I watched in my life. And back when I watched it for the first time, I was a child. I watched it rather sporadically because back then there were no streaming platforms. Yes, I am old enough that I predate streaming platforms the way we know them, even though like Netflix exists since like what, 1997? And so back then it was whatever you managed to get on TV, if like that channel was included in your TV package, and I couldn't get the chance to watch it in the order I was supposed to. Like I didn't follow the order of the episodes in which they came out. And although Two and a Half Men is one of those series where the episodes are disconnected from each other, I mean, the characters are the same, they're recurring characters, but it doesn't follow a particular and set plot line where you need to watch a previous episode to understand the subsequent one. So when I was little, I loved watching Two and a Half Men. Granted, I didn't have the critical analysis lens and the female rage back then the way I do now. And now I was so excited to go back to it and go back to my sitcom roots because it is a long series and I love bingeable sitcoms. Like, for example, The Big Bang Theory, Modern Family, The Office, How I Met Your Mother, Friends, and all of those. There is just this unbreakable bond between a girl and her favorite sitcom that has 10 plus seasons, each season consisting of 22 episodes. But now I'm not even enjoying Two and a Half Men anymore because I am uninspired. Nothing I watch seems to be engaging, nothing I watch captures my attention. And it is not because Two and a Half Men is sexist, although, as you can imagine, it does leave a bad taste in my feminist mouth. But whenever I'm watching something from the early 2000s or to early 2010s, I know it will reek of misogyny and heteronormative whiteness. So I am trying to, by watching it, set it in the context in which it was produced and not judge it from a modern perspective. But apart from these media scholar slash feminist slash I would like to consider a proper person reasons, I just cannot get into it for whatever reason. I just remember Two and a Half Men being more engaging, and this is not all due to my boredom. I just imagine it being like, I remember it being better. And I'm not saying that it's bad, I just think I romanticized the hell out of it because the last time I watched an episode was over 10 years ago because that series ended in 2015 and I just never rewatched it. So, you know how nostalgia makes you remember things better than they actually were? Maybe this applies not only to people, but to TV shows as well. That's why I cannot bring myself to rewatch Victorious, iCarly, Big Time Rush, H2O, Hannah Montana, and all of the series I used to watch as a child. Because not only will I be challenging the narrative now, but I know I will question what about this I used to find appealing. And also, some of those, like, the production isn't always the best, and like, I'm talking also about what you see on screen, but also, especially what happened behind the camera, because there is a lot of darkness behind some of the shows which brought me the most joy in my childhood. And yeah, that is just me here judging from my room with no equipment or production whatsoever. I am entitled to judge production and artistry, of course. But you know what I'm talking about. We have all seen the camp rock scenes that went viral, and let's be real, those are objectively cringe. Like, she is really good. But back then, they were my jam. So I don't want to ruin my childhood perception of good fun by looking at things now that I can grasp what actually is going on. Maybe ignorance is bliss, I don't know. But like, also when I was little, I used to force my parents to watch them with me, and I cannot imagine, like shout out to them, and like, this is a testimony of how much they actually love their children. Because imagine sitting through this every single time and like telling your children you've already seen this episode 17 times, and your child being like, no, I actually have not seen it, and then reciting every single quote. Also, apart from Two and a Half Men, I was watching Arrested Development before Netflix kicked me out of the joint account I have with friends from back home, because Netflix, we're not password sharing. I am just in a different country. Can you please bring me back the access to the service I am paying for? Thank you. So Arrested Development, I am sorry to say this, but it is not the best thing that's ever been produced. And this is coming from someone who is a die-hard sitcom fan. To be honest, at a certain point, I did get into it, and I was watching it with somewhat of an excitement, or maybe it was Stockholm Syndrome, I'm not so sure. But now, the last season, it is taking me a couple of days to go through a single episode. And they're not even long episodes, they're like only 20 minutes, which to me, by the way, is the perfect length of an episode. I feel like 40 minutes to an hour is just becoming excessive. And don't ask me why, I'm not too sure I can explain it, but I would much rather, and I find it way easier to sit and watch 3 episodes, each 20 minutes in a row with no break in between, than sit through a one single 1 hour episode. That is just girl math. It somehow feels like less of a commitment. And I'm not saying that I'm scared of commitment, although that is not necessarily untrue, but it just feels more easily digestible. It feels more flowy. It feels like I can opt in and opt out at any given point, which I feel like an hour of episode does not allow you to, because you're like constantly in the loop, you're drawn into the plot. It's not separated into small bites, it's like an entire meal. It is so crazy to me how the standards of series production have changed over time. With now, you've probably noticed it as well, there's more emphasis put on longer episodes but fewer episodes. And now a season comprises of usually 10-ish episodes. And that is just crazy compared, for example, to, I don't know, Pretty Little Liars and The Vampire Diaries, which were long episodes, 45 minutes maybe each, and then 20 something episodes per season, and then many seasons and many episodes per season. And I don't know, like, that just to me is crazy about like the way actors work now. I'm not saying that they work less now than they used to. I'm just saying that back then maybe actors were overworked, and we cannot judge them for doing the things they did, because they were on set constantly. And I don't know if this change occurred because of production viewpoint, or because we as audiences, for many reasons, have shorter attention spans now, or maybe it's a mixture of both two together. I don't know. I just find it so interesting. But the thing is, I just miss bingeable content, one that makes you immediately click the next episode button because you cannot even wait those 6 seconds for it to autoplay. I very vividly remember the very first time I binge watched something. I was watching Pretty Little Liars, and it was Pretty Little Liars was such a bingeable show. Mind you, I have only seen it once. I've never rewatched it. I saw it like what, 9 or 10 years ago. So all of this will be coming from my scrappy memory. And what I remember from that first binge watch in my entire life, I remember I was watching season one, or at least I believe it was season one. And each episode is around 40 minutes. And I remember watching for almost 7 or 8-ish hours straight with just getting up simply to go grab something to eat and then, go pee. And I extremely vividly remember how terrible I felt physically afterwards. I felt exhausted from sitting and just consuming content. And it was also during winter, which meant that it was getting dark early. So I somehow consciously that day deprived myself from going out and getting fresh air simply to stay and giggle and kick my feet over Arya and Ezra. And I remember I felt so terrible afterwards that I promised myself to never again let that happen. And I don't mean binging, I mean like going out every day. And like, even if it's just for 2 minutes, I need to go out, even if it's just to take out the trash. And that day of like the Pretty Little Liars day, it scarred me so much that to this day, I make sure to find a reason to go out. Even if the reason is I have no reason. Even if it is just to take a picture of the car that is parked outside my house. Even if it's just to put on my shoes and like put on my socks. And the only time I broke this promise to myself, this vow to myself, was when I got COVID. But as you can imagine, that was a pretty valid reason not to go out. And I just feel like my day is such a waste if I don't go out. I don't know. Like, even if it's just me going out on my balcony, be it even in terrible weather, I just love being outside. I am a homebody, but I love being outside. And I kid you not, I think that is also because I grew up around nature a lot because my hometown is located in the bottom of a mountain. So also my parents brought me up in a way to respect and just enjoy nature, which I'm extremely grateful for. So I think that's why I just need to, go out and touch some grass every now and then. But the thing is, it gets to extremes sometimes. And I kid you not, I had this summer, like 2024, I had this virus thing during, well, the summer. And I threw up more than 33 times that day. And I counted, trust me. And I just went outside in my yard to throw up in my bucket in my yard because that would mean I was outside and I would immediately feel better. Spoiler alert, I did not. But you couldn't find my waist. That's all I'm going to say. And trust me, I know you tuned in this week to hear me talk about spitting my guts out. So there you go. For all of you freaks who are into throw up. Throw up makes me like want to throw up. I don't know, like seeing someone throw up, it makes me gag. I hate throwing up. It is so painful. It's so unpleasant. And doing that day, doing it more than 33 times that day, it was just a terrible experience. And I hope I don't have to go through this anytime soon, or like if ever, that will be amazing. So anyways, that's enough for, I should have given a spoiler alert for throw up. I know there's people who have phobia of throwing up and of just like imagining, and I'll just continue to not trigger any of you. So There is a little side note that I wanted to make about Pretty Little Liars and Arya and Ezra's relationship before I went on this whole summer virus tangent. I know the actors themselves have talked about this, and the public is very divided on the topic because also I said it earlier, it is about setting the thing, like setting the scene, setting the series in the context, in the social context in which it was produced. But can we just agree that this relationship was extremely weird? Their age gap was massive, there was a power trip, there was like it's somewhat icky that we just socially accepted this relationship between a schoolgirl and her teacher. That was full on grooming. And I swear to God, look at any movie or series that was developed in the 2000s or early 2010s, and you can tell a lot about the society we were back then. There is so many questionable narratives, morally questionable, socially questionable, like from racism to homophobia to ageism, which is why when people who see a woman who is 50, they say, "Oh my God, you don't look 50 at all." Yeah, because the media doesn't portray 50-year-olds. And even if it mentions them, it depicts them, or at least depicted them, as these social dinosaurs that are barely holding on for dear life and are on the brink of death. So we have just not been exposed to aging women, and that is why there is such a stigma around growing old when it comes to women. And you can see it in cosmetics, you can see it in advertisement, you can see it in the media constantly. Like, women are taught to be scared of aging because the way things are set up or were set up and hopefully are changing, basically you get socially annihilated when you pass 30. Also, there is, or was, but let's be real, is a whole lot of diminishing women to sexual objects rather than sufficient people. Like, so that period of cinema, it was very, very questionable. Did I enjoy it at the time? Yes. Did I actually understand how it would affect me in the future? No. So I am happy that we are trying to move on from these narratives because, like, we should be having these conversations. And hopefully we will continue to have them because those are problematic narratives to be put forward on so many levels, because representation matters. The content we consume matters, not only because it is a reflection of society, but also because it shapes society. And you can see how everything was extremely catered to the heterosexual male gaze, and in particular the male gaze of a white heterosexual man. And that is just not the whole picture, because life and art are far more multifaceted and they do not cater to simply a singular subsection of the community. It is okay if they're targeting that community, but not all art should like conform to those criteria. So I'm just happy to see that we're seeing change in movies and TV series and representation. And there is something I need to, however, criticize, and that is the fact that there is a lot of extremely evidently forced multi-layeredness in representation. And now, hear me out before you point at me and try to cancel me. I am sure you will be able to see it as well once I explain what I mean. Because, okay, so what do I mean by evidently forced multi-layeredness in representation? So, because now there are certain regulations, or to be precise, like standards that a movie should meet to be considered worthy. And I don't know if you're aware of those standards, but a couple of years ago, the Oscars introduced this sort of a system, this set of criteria about representation, which I think is a great leap forward, because yeah, it's just nice to include people in a movie about people, made by people, for people. So, what I don't like is when the implementation of these criteria seems extremely forced and unwanted in the production. So, for instance, the criteria, like, this is just a limited scope of them, this is not all of them. So they're about inclusion, they're about including underrepresented characters on screen, such as women, people from different ethnic backgrounds, people with different skin colors, with different, like, people from different sexual orientations, and disabled people. And what I don't like is how certain productions are approaching this, when to simply say they have, like, they just want to say they have checked the box, that they have an inclusive narrative, which isn't the case, because they're so, to save money, they cast an actor who is supposed to fit all of these criteria at the same time. So again, they can say, oh no, we are inclusive. So, for instance, you cannot cast a singular actor who is a woman, who is from Afro Asian descent, who is queer and disabled, and then pat yourself on the back for a job well done. That is not what all of this is about. That is not what this is about at all. Like, you can't include a single non-white, non-heterosexual character, not able-bodied, and consider your job and representation well done. That is not how it works. I am not saying that there aren't queer, disabled Afro-Asian women. I am sure there are, and I'm sure they would love to see themselves represented on screen. I'm just saying that you cannot just do only this and put all of this pressure on this singular character. Like, you have to do more. You have to have this character and many more. You have to have layers, but not forced layers to just meet the criteria. You have to think about the stories you create and to make them real and to make them human. You cannot include a side character to fit those criteria, but still create a questionable narrative, but claim it worthy because of that one side character. It is all about creating depth into the world you're portraying. The question shouldn't be just about whether you create representation or not. It should also be extremely focused on what type of representation you create. So, not solely on the what, but extremely importantly, focusing on the how and the why of representation. And what is pissing me off is when people start rioting about certain actors or actresses being cast in a certain role. Who gives a shit if the Little Mermaid is a person of color or if Snow White is Colombian? The people who get so pressed about those stuff are the root of the problem, and they should keep their racist, discriminatory remarks to themselves, because nobody wants nor needs to hear you moan and complain about how you don't like the world striving to achieve equity and equality because you feel like this will threaten your privileges. Thank you. No, thank you. Wait, there's another little thing I need to mention about binging, which I find fascinating. Actually, one of the very first essays I wrote in university was about the social and psychological effect of binging. And this thing I want to mention is more on the business side of things, which is also significantly important, if not the main driver of the development of this way of consuming content. So yes, after the Pretty Little Liars binge, I promised myself that every single day I will go out, even if it's just to take out the trash or simply walk out the door just to go back in. And that is because personally, as a result of binging, I just felt like I was wasting my life binge watching something that I could just watch over time. It just felt like watching 20 minutes each day would not take as much of my life as a single binge session of 8 hours. Again, girl math. You either understand it or you don't. It cannot be taught. It is innate. And streaming platforms not only accommodate binging, they encourage it. And that is because they profit off of it. And that is why they create they create their series the way they do. And here is the thing I want to mention. I will give Netflix credit for this because I think this was a genius business decision on their side. And I hardly ever compliment big corporations, but this one was definitely a smart move for them. So, what I'm referring to is when they started splitting a season in two parts and started releasing, let's say, the first 5 episodes in one go and then the next 5 episodes in a couple of weeks later. And I think they only started doing this 1 or 2 years ago. Now, the reason I find this fascinating from a business perspective is because they keep the buzz around the series buzzing. So, the first set of episode that is released generates online buzz, which generates in itself a lot of money, and people impatiently begin to wait for the second set of episodes, making hypotheses, theories of what will happen because they're left on this major cliffhanger. And that is why, for example, some of the biggest cliffhangers now are in the middle of the series because they need to keep you engaged. And then when the second set of episodes is released, it amplifies this buzz. And the thing is, if they were to release all 10 episodes altogether, they would attract the public for 2 to 3 weeks, and then something else will come up and the attention will shift. Now, with this new model, you have the attention for the first set for 2 weeks, let's say. Then it flows into a period of awaiting the second part. And then a few weeks later, the second part is released. And in the meantime, people have been discussing and have been consuming content. And by doing so, generating money for the company. And when the second part releases, the wave gets repicked and they generate a longer buzz and consequently more money. So now, instead of getting a 2 to 3 week attention span, you're getting a month and a half. And that is just what you want from a marketing and business perspective. Longevity of the stream of income. And I'm sorry for being such a nerd about those kinds of things, but I just find them so fascinating, which is exactly why I am doing a full-on master's degree in this. And at that point, you just start thinking, are we slowly and gradually going back to the traditional pre-streaming platforms release schedule of 1 or 2 episodes per week? Because this keeps the people going. It keeps them hooked for a longer period of time because it keeps them guessing. It keeps them wanting more and more. So is this all a big circle? Is it an evolution or is it a revolution in the TV/movie industry? A thesis by Dirty Martini podcast. Tune in to find out. I don't know. I just find this fascinating. And guys, even if it is proof that releasing 10 episodes in one go is more beneficial for all parties included, I still would stick to the 1 episode per week thing because it works for me. So just giving you a heads up in case this wave also enters the podcast world and this is what you expect from me, I will be honoring tradition. You know what's something else I respect Netflix for? Bringing back Cameron Diaz to our screens. I love Cameron Diaz, and I think she's an extremely talented and charismatic woman, an extremely talented and charismatic actress, and I'm so excited for Shrek 6. Shrek 5, Shrek 6. Guys, it's been so long since Shrek was released. I don't even remember what number we're on. I'm just excited for the new Shrek, which is coming in 2026. But about Cameron Diaz, I remember when I was little, my favorite movie used to be Night and Day with her and Tom Cruise. And how I triggered this memory was when I found a notebook from when I was 8 or 9. I was in the second grade. It was an old book from my English class in school, and we were supposed to answer some questions about ourselves. And before you judge me for hoarding things from when I was in the second grade, before you tell me I am a hoarder, I will be the first to say it. That is true. I am a hoarder. I am a keeper. But that comes from emotion. It doesn't come from that thing, like holding on to things, like refusing to, oh, I am fully refusing to let go, but like from an emotional perspective. I am an extremely sentimental person, and I keep everything because I find every trace I have left in my life valuable. Every single experience I have lived, I find memorable. And because I keep a diary every single day, I can like look back into like a receipt and see the date and go and see what that receipt meant to me on that day. So I've kept all my notebooks true. They're in a box, and I have not looked at them since I graduated because I don't need them. I still know the alphabet, but I like the thought of having them and just having the option to look back at them as a form of memorabilia and just, I don't know, I think it's very cute. I think it's very sentimental. One day when I die, those can be burned. I will not know. Although if you burn my diaries, I will haunt you. I will haunt you and haunt you in the afterlife as well. So, but yeah, I think it's just very cute to keep such little things. And that's why I also keep random receipts and tickets to museums or the cinema. It's just places I have visited. And I just love such little trinkets that may seem like trash, but are actually very meaningful to me. AKA hoarder. Hoarder? Hoarder. Yes. But as for this notebook from my English class, under what's your favorite movie, I had written Night and Day. And back then, I didn't know that movie titles don't get literally translated. So I had written Real Fraud, which is what the title is translated as in Bulgarian. So it took me like a second to recognize what is going on because I haven't seen a movie in Bulgarian in forever. I honestly don't remember. Well, I mean, I watched one with my mom on New Year's, but that was the first one. It was the one with Jennifer Aniston, We Are the Millers. Yeah, so we watched that one. But that was the first one in many, many years because like since I became good enough at English in English, yeah, apparently not good enough, like good enough to consume content in English without like, you know, having to get it dubbed in Bulgarian. I've solely been consuming content in English. So I touched upon what a mind-boggle language and translation are for me in last week's episode. Go check it out. But honestly, I just think we need to give credit to people who translate titles, translate books, translate stuff in a way to keep the meaning, because literal translation doesn't always work. Most of the time it doesn't work. Most of the time it doesn't make any sense. And for example, like my mom asked me what the title of This Is Sending Me Down a Spiral, last week's episode, means, and I didn't know how to explain it to her because the literal translation means absolutely nothing in Bulgarian. So translation, it is so much harder than you may think if you've never done it. So don't underestimate it. I remember in high school, they had us translate Goethe poems from German to Bulgarian, and that was torture. Well, in one of the summer holidays, we had to translate a full-on book. But as for titles, for example, now with the podcast, and also when I'm writing poetry, if the title doesn't come up naturally in the episode or in the poem, and you have to put effort into coming up with a title that is catchy, that is representative, that is meaningful, it is just very difficult because it can be called so many things. And especially doing this in a different language can be a bit difficult, even more difficult perhaps. And it took me a long time to realize that the way I know titles in Bulgarian is not the actual title of the movie. Like, for instance, my literal favorite movie is Just Go With It with Adam Sandler and Jennifer Aniston. Well, among others, but it's definitely top three. Shout out to Pirates of the Caribbean and the Hunger Games. And in Bulgarian, it is called A Borrowed Wife. It's not called Just Go With It because, yeah, just go with it. Literal translation means nothing. So it is just very interesting to me, and I think it's an art form in itself. So shout out to all translators. I appreciate you a lot. Your work is extremely valuable and it is not unnoticed. So as for the new Back in Action movie, like the new Cameron Diaz movie, which is where all of this started. So honestly, I liked it. That's it. That's the review. That's the media scholar analysis. And you know what I also realized while watching it? That this is the first time I am actually comprehending the fact that I am watching a movie that is set in London. Well, at least the majority of it is set in London after I have been to London. So that was a really cool experience because I just love watching movies that are taking place in places where I've been. So that was really nice because I love the gherkin. Oh my God, I was so starstruck by the gherkin. People were so starstruck by Big Ben, and I was starstruck by Big Ben, by Buckingham Palace. On the top of my list when I went to London was to see the gherkin. I just think it's so beautiful. I felt like a Disney adult, but like instead of seeing the Disney castle, I saw the gherkin. And the friend I was with and who was walking me around, she was like, "Really? The gherkin?" But it's just such an iconic building. I don't know, not to like praise. I think it's like a bank, but I don't know, it's not a bank. Like it's like maybe offices, I don't know. But in every single movie I've watched, like every single Marvel movie or action movie that takes place in London, the first building to be destroyed is the gherkin. And seeing it there in person, fully existing, I was starstruck. Like I couldn't stop staring at it. So if I ever hopefully get the chance to go to London again, because I really loved London, it was one of those moments where I'm like, should I move here? But then like I am not good with crowds, and London is one big crowd, so I don't know how that would do. But like if I ever get a chance to go to London again, I would revisit the Gherkin because I'm just so fascinated with that building. I don't know. So yeah, that was a cool experience seeing a movie that's set in a city I've been to. So the movie was enjoyable. It was a no-brainer kinda. However, here's the media scholar critical analysis. I long for the day, maybe it's not going to happen in my lifetime, but for the day when the villain in an American movie production is not Eastern European. I know it reflects politics and stuff, but must it always be an Eastern European guy with a thick accent? That's the thing I didn't like, honestly, that it contributed to this stereotype nourishment, but I cannot get a narrative that includes Cameron Diaz and fights anti-Eastern Europeanness. So apart from that, it was an engaging movie. I just love seeing Cameron Diaz back after such a long break from acting. And I'm happy to see that she's enjoying it as well and that she's ready to be back, even if it's just for this single movie. Even if hopefully she makes more movies because I really, really like her as an actress. I think she's really good at her job. So my verdict is, although it is not a rom-com, like it has absolutely nothing to do with rom-coms, but still I'll say it. It is an action movie. It's literally in the title. It is called Back in Action. So wait, back in action because Cameron Diaz and Jamie Foxx are back in action after a break. Oh my god. So my plea is bring back plotless rom-coms. Bring back feel-good movies. I feel like this genre of movies totally disappeared. There is no more How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. There is no more Just Go With It. There is no more 50 First Dates. There is no more 2 weeks notice. No more 10 Things I Hate About You. It's just rom-coms don't exist anymore the way they used to. And I don't know why that is. And feel-good movies don't exist the same way they used to. Now everything has to be extremely existentially meaningful, which, trust me, I love it. Show it to me, Rachel. Give it to me, please. But also, let's cater to our other aspects of life, which are about enjoyment, which is simply to watch a movie, to be entertained, to take our mind off of stuff, off of the existential, and just enjoy the ordinary, to just feel good, to just be kicking our little feet while we're watching a slow burn or an enemies to lovers or friends to lovers. Bring back No Strings Attached. Bring back Friends with Benefits. Bring back A Cinderella Story, which I watched recently. Hilary Duff, amazing. This is just my literal favorite genre of movies, and the only thing that has come somewhat close to it has been Anyone But You in the recent years. But although I personally did not necessarily find it too fitting, it was plotless, which I enjoyed. No shade, but come on. Although I love that it was set in Australia, because Australia, come on, stunning, man. I've never been there, but one day. So I didn't necessarily enjoy Anyone But You too much. It was okay, but the thing is, I grew up on and I am craving watching Matthew McConaughey or Hugh Grant or Adam Sandler, and then a selected blonde actress that will deliver, who will eat and leave no crumbs behind, be it Aniston, be it Diaz, be it Hudson, a blonde actress, because for whatever reason it was always a blonde actress. Well, a reason being the beauty stereotypes of the time. And here we're not talking about representation, although we should, but bring back movies that were so plotless, that were so predictable, that movies that were so meaningless that the only thing they brought you was joy. Art doesn't have to be high art to be enjoyed or to be celebrated. Just throwing it out there. So I was very, very excited to watch the new Cameron Diaz movie, that I didn't even realize that this was also Jamie Foxx's first movie since his medical emergency, because I honestly had forgotten that he had a medical emergency, because I don't know why. I'm not someone who sits here and thinks about Jamie Foxx on the regular. He's an extremely talented man. There's absolutely no denying it. Don't get me wrong. I don't think of him that often. Of course, at least a couple of times a year, I rewatch his talk show appearances on James Corden and Jimmy Fallon, where he performs songs in a different genre or has a riff off and stuff. I find those extremely entertaining, and I think there's such good content. But yeah, anyway, so I didn't realize that this movie is significant, not only because of Cameron Diaz, but also because it was Jamie Foxx's first movie since that emergency. So shout out to him too. And a couple of days after I saw that movie, my lack of inspiration that I told you about in this the beginning of the episode, like, look at this full circle moment here. Ah, what an amazing storyteller. What can I say? So that lack of inspiration hit, and I didn't know what to watch, and I wanted to find something entertaining to watch, but there are moments when I'm looking for something that is not a series, but that is not a full-length movie. And in moments like these, I more often than not turn to stand-up specials. And I just love stand-up comedy a lot. John Mulaney is the person who put me on stand-up comedy specials, and since then I've never looked back, and I love watching stand-up comedy. And I think personally it's extremely entertaining, and I have been to a couple of stand-up shows, and before you say anything, I've only been to male stand-up shows because the female comedians I have found and whose content I enjoy have not toured in the places I have been when I have been there. So I have seen Kevin Hart, I've seen John Mulaney, I've seen Jack Whitehall, and I've seen Trevor Noah. And I had so much fun during those shows because stand up is such a particular form of art. It is so difficult to perform, and when people master it the way the people I have witnessed master it, it's just mesmerizing. So I would love to go to more stand-up shows, but unfortunately none of my favorite stand-up comedians are coming to the Netherlands anytime soon. But that is a topic for another time. So I decided to check out Jamie Foxx's new stand-up special on Netflix. Today I'm talking about Netflix and promoting their things as if they're paying me. Netflix, if you're listening to this, please stop kicking me out of the joint account when I connect to a different Wi-Fi network. I cannot afford to get my own account, or if you don't do this, at least offer me an internship. Please, like that would be a nice compensation, please. But as for Jamie Foxx, I had never seen his stand-up comedy, and I wasn't aware of what his style of comedy was like. And I put it on, and again, it's on Netflix, hashtag not sponsored, and it is called What Had Happened to Us. And I just made my dinner. I'm looking forward to enjoying my evening before I go to bed. Some relaxation, a couple good laughs, and then a nice little ending story, because that's how a big portion of the specials I have seen end, with like a little nice message for the audience to carry after they've experienced the show. And I put it on, and I didn't expect to cry. I went in thinking that I would be laughing my ass off, and I ended up crying my eyes out. I was about to say ears out. Can you? No. I mean, if you sweat from your ears, it's technically your ears cry. I'm talking nonsense, in the wise words of Sabrina Carpenter. But the thing is, yeah, I had forgotten he had a medical emergency, and I thought that, he would just say it in passing, because I didn't expect to get full disclosure from him about such a personal matter, because displaying the personal to the public humanizes the celebrity. And what I think Hollywood is trying to do, and has been extremely successful when doing, is the dehumanization of celebrities and their portrayal as brands and not as people. And that is why they have become the icons, because they have become untouchable products, because they're deprived of human characteristics. They're presented as something to consume rather than something to feel, and like something to connect to on a basic human level. And I'm not saying that is good. I'm not saying that in fact, I think it's very detrimental for everyone involved. I'm just saying that, this is a practice that is going on, and seeing the transparency in Jamie Foxx's storytelling was extremely touching. And I believe it was necessary to humanize him, to recognize that no amount of money can buy you health. Basically, this special seems to show you how, in the face of death, because he had a terrible stroke, the entire special is dedicated to the medical emergency and how it changed his life. And so he had a stroke, and they questioned whether he would make it or not. And he did make it, as you can imagine, because he's here telling the story. So, what this special is created to teach you is that in the face of death, we're equal. It doesn't matter if you're Jamie Foxx. It doesn't matter if in your bank account you have a figure with 3 numbers or a figure with 17 numbers or whatever. It does not matter. To death, we are all equal. And not to get too optimistic, but death will get us all eventually. And if there is one thing we should say about Jamie Foxx, is that he's an extremely compelling storyteller. I was so touched by his story and the way he told it that I just couldn't stop crying. And he told his story in such a beautiful, artistic way. So, whether it was him or his clone, if you know, you know, who put on that show, it was really touching. What it makes you do is take stock on your life and look from a larger, more subjective, distant perspective that will actually help you, like, keep you grounded and really appreciate life while you have it, because you get one chance to live it. Sure, he got a second chance, but what he's using his second chance at life for is urging us to understand that we shouldn't waste our first chance in the hope to get a second chance. So let that be motivation to enjoy and be grateful for the meaningful things and make things meaningful. Because again, in the face of death, it doesn't matter if you're Jamie Foxx, it doesn't matter if you're Cameron Diaz. All your Oscars and Grammys are worthless. In the face of death, we are all equal, and we do not take our awards, money, and accomplishments to the grave. We take our memories, the love we loved, and the life we lived. So I say, let's all try to live with a little bit more grace, a little bit more gratitude, and a little bit more love. And I think that we should end this episode here on a high note, with this positive message, like a stand-up comedy special. So, thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you in the next one. But until then, stay hydrated, wear sunscreen, and don't support genocide. Bye!